to the next episode of the Building Success podcast. I'm your host, Matt Ellis. And today I have with me my friend Greg Connor. Greg is the CFO of Trilogy Health Services, also a member of Vistage, where Greg and I have been able to connect in Vistage and share some fun stories there. Greg, welcome. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, want to do it a little icebreaker question. I always like to do that to kind of, relax, get the mood set here, get people laughing a little bit. But icebreaker today is, would you rather only be able to whisper or shout for the rest of your life?
I'm going to go with whisper. And I feel like there's a lot of shouting in the world already. And if you have something meaningful to say, people actually want to listen to you, they'll listen to you. If you're just shouting all the time, you just become more of the noise. So yeah, I think whisper.
I would agree. Looking at this particular icebreaker, I'm not sure I could ever pick the shouting. I think that at least with shouting, you think about being in a public place and you need to say something in a public place that you don't want the whole public to hear. Yeah, maybe it's better to do the whisper. So yeah, I'm with you, man. Whisper's the one. Kind of going back here again, you are the CFO now for Trilogy. I think boiled all the way down, and I'm going to allow you the chance to kind of explain it a little bit better than I am. But Trilogy Health Services, they manage senior living facilities, and you have recently been appointed CFO of Trilogy. Kind of got that decently, right?
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. We are a owner operator of senior health facilities throughout the Midwest. We operate in 5 states: Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. What makes us unique is we do what people traditionally think of as nursing homes, right? Skilled nursing. And we also do what people refer to as senior housing. So assisted living or personal care here in Kentucky, memory care, and then independent living. And we have a model where we kind of combine all 3 on one campus so that when mom or dad or grandma or grandpa have to come stay with us, we don't have to move them again. They are here for their lifetime. We found study after study have said that it's bad if you end up moving someone, especially like they have dementia, moving them when they know their normal daily rhythms. You move them somewhere new, it actually can decrease their lifespan. And so that's kind of the idea behind it. And kind of the name Trilogy was born out of that, right? Of having kind of these 3 distinct service lines in the same campus.
Now that's the first time that I've heard you explain Trilogy that way. That's really cool. I'd heard the elevator pitch there on what you guys do, but I didn't know that was kind of where that came up with. That's pretty neat. So we talked a little bit about you being the newly appointed CFO. I'd like for you to kind of share your journey, kind of how you got where you are. I know you spent some time in Chicago. You've made your way back to the greater Louisville area there. If you could kind of share that journey that life has taken you on so far.
Yeah. So originally from Louisville, born in Louisville, raised on the sunny side in Indiana in Jeffersonville. Went to Jeff High there because everyone in Louisville wants to know where you went to high school. And made my way to Indiana University for my undergrad. Actually started in kind of an IT field within the business school. Got to my junior year and found out man, I really do not like writing code. It's boring. I'm probably not very good at it. So I got to come up with something different. And the grandfather started a real estate firm, real estate development after World War II. Grandmother was his bookkeeper. It was kind of the family business. And I saw how hard they worked and how successful they had been. And said, well, man, maybe I should go back in doing what the family does in real estate. So pivoted in college and finished up getting my degree in real estate finance. That took me to Chicago, where I started banking, specifically in the real estate field. Spent a lot of time there. I spent 10 years in banking, bouncing around from bank to bank. I think, I worked 5 different banks over a period of about 10 years, 2 of which were my choosing, right? There's a lot of consolidation. It was in 2007, 2008, when bank failures were happening and bank consolidation was rampant. So was doing that for a while, was working at a bank, and it was being basically taken over by the government. And I said, man, I don't want to be, 50 or 60 years old and find out I'm losing my job because something that happened at this big corporation, right? And I saw a lot of that during the downturn in 08 and 09, where people I worked with, I respected, they all of a sudden didn't have a job. And it's like, well, what am I going to do now for the last 10 years of my career? So I decided to go back to business school, went to University of Chicago, finished up there, and then kind of had an opportunity to move out of banking and into a small real estate private equity firm called Adventures Journeys Capital, or AJ Capital Partners, and ran their capital markets group for 2 years. That was a blast, a lot of work, a lot of hard work, but we were doing something that had tangible benefits. So that's what I love about real estate is you build something, it's there, right? I can go see it. And so we did that for 2 years, and ultimately, my wife and I have a daughter. It was time to move back from Chicago, and my mother got sick, and so we said, let's start our journey back to Louisville, so our daughter could be around grandparents. Knew the individual who started Trilogy, Randy Bufford. I kind of reached out to him just to see who was hiring in Louisville, and just so happens they had an opportunity where they need someone to step into their treasury role, and that was my background for 13 years at that point. So I just said, yeah, I can probably do that. So came on board. I've been here for 6 years. Started in the development group until the treasury role was ready. I was our treasurer for the last 4 years, and then in January of this year took over the CFO role full time.
Awesome. Now, going back to something that you said earlier in the banking and having 5 banking jobs in 10 years, is that common in the banking industry? And the reason I ask, I have some buddies that are in banking in the Charlotte area, and it seems that there's a lot of moving and shaking. I mean, I know that's a pillar for a lot of the big banks there, but it seems like every time I get on LinkedIn and another position change or another, gone to another bank or something. Is that common in the banking industry?
Yeah, I think it is. I like to say banks sometimes have knee-jerk reactions to things. So let's say when retail was starting to go out and Amazon just started, talking 15 years ago, everyone was like, well, retail's dead. No one's going to go to a retail store ever again in their life. Everyone's just going to order everything online. And yes, I still order a whole bunch of stuff on Amazon, but I still like to go to the actual physical store.
Right.
But our leaders at the banks would just be like, not doing any more retail loans. We're not going to do any more loans on. And if you're a specialized person in that area, you're going to be like, all right, now I'm out of a job.
Yeah.
So you end up moving. So I like to say the best bankers are the ones that have relationships with people. Where you get tough times, you call them and tell them what's going on, and they say, "I get it. We can give you some help." And if you are good at that and you build good relationships, then yeah, take those relationships and move them with you.
Right. Yeah. Good to know, man. I know that was very curious about that because I've always wondered, and I need to ask my friends in the industry as well, kind of their take on it. Of one of the things that I've noticed, but kind of going back to, you said you've been there at Trilogy for 6 years and you've been in a variety of positions. Now that you're the CFO, obviously you're in a pretty influential position from a leadership standpoint now. And I'm curious about your leadership style. Obviously, I'm sure you have a team that reports to you. How does Greg manage on a day-to-day basis your direct reports?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure I should know. I personally have this thing about, I think we overuse the word leader and leadership. I don't know that I'm a leader myself, right? I always consider a leader, and you know this better than I do. Like someone's going to say, like, let's go into battle. Who's going to follow me? They have a choice. They don't have to say, yeah, I'm gonna go do what Greg says. They have a choice to say, yeah, maybe he's right, maybe he's not. So I think we have a whole lot of managers in this world. I think we have a whole lot of executives in this world. I don't know that we have a whole lot of leaders. I hope one day I can call myself one. That being said, I think our generation has probably changed a little bit from the boomer generation, where it's you're going to do what I tell you to do, and you're just going to move on. Here at Trilogy, we are founded on a servant leadership model. And, before I got here, I would always tell you, culture, leadership, those are just, soft, fuzzy words that people throw around to get you to move over to our company. But here it's real. We call our home office, we're supporting the field. So the people that are in our buildings that are doing the work every day, we're here to support them. We actually, when we onboard people, we present the organizational chart upside down. So it's all of these workers that are in our buildings first that are really the impactful people. And then it funnels down to, our C-suite where I'm at. And my goal is to make their life easier, right? And in turn, if they are feeling supported and valued, they give better care to our residents who then have better outcomes. They want to stay in our buildings. They enjoy staying in our buildings, which ultimately leads to higher occupancy, better rates, better reputation in the market. People want to be here. which ultimately leads to financial components. We have a thing here we say earnings last on purpose. And so, for me as a CFO, really what I'm trying to do is find ways to make the lives easier of my people on the campus. If they don't want to look at a P&L, they obviously have incentives to do that. But at the end of the day, I got to make it as easy as possible for them because day to day, what they're really doing is taking care of people. The goal for them to make money, we have to, right? But it's at the very end of their thought process, right? They're worried about Miss Smith and she's discharging today and whether or not she's doing okay and how is her health. Those are the big picture items. So for me, it's all about how do I support our campuses? What can I do to make their lives easier?
Yeah. You said multiple things there that kind of piqued my interest. I think the first one, when you're talking about kind of the baby boomers generation, or the, even Gen Xers, millennials, whatever, for that matter, you're right. It was very much a, here is task A through Z that you will complete before you go home today. I know you and I have talked about this before, and we've talked about it in Vistage before. It's a different managing leadership environment today, because it's fluid. No, I mean, it
Oh
can
yeah.
change on a day-to-day basis, and people don't necessarily want just your task that you must complete today. They want inclusivity, and it's all great, but it kind of goes in, with my next question. You talked A, about you guys being founded in servant leadership, which I think is awesome, and proving that you'll get your hands dirty and do whatever you can do to be a servant to not only your internal but your external clients. And so that's great to hear. Kind of goes into my next question. The other word you said there was culture, and the two big buzzwords, reading business books or podcasts or whatever it is you may listen to, culture and strategy are both the big buzzwords right now. So I'm curious your take on that. If you lean harder on one than you do the other, if you think it's a healthy mix of both.
Yeah. If you would have talked to me 6 years ago before I joined here, I would tell you, culture is just, something we just say. The banking industry is very much, here are your goals, here are your numbers. You're going to meet these numbers. If you don't, there's 10 people standing behind you that are going to do it. And so there really is no focus on culture. You make your money, you move on. When I joined here, we said, culture, culture. I think I heard it 100 times when we onboarded. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it really is, if people believe in your culture, if they believe that they're being supported, they will, walk through walls for you. When I think about that, my job as a senior leader is to set the strategy for our company, right? Make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction. And then the culture supports that. And so, for example, we have a goal, a strategy of becoming the best healthcare company in the Midwest. That's a very broad strategy, right? And that's what I think you have to do is, this is the direction we are all going to march. How do we get there? And so the culture then comes around us, making sure that we have a culture around fall prevention, right? That we make sure that we have routines around that. And wound caring. We do mock surveys to make sure that if and when the state comes in, that we're going to score really high. We're going to have the best CMS star ratings. So I think culture drives a lot of it. Strategy makes sure we're going in the right direction. Culture is what gets us there, in my opinion.
That's very well stated. Talking about influential leaders, people, you kind of hit on your approach to leadership. I'm curious if there is someone influential that kind of shaped your career. Maybe it's now at Trilogy, maybe it's somebody that used to be at Trilogy, maybe it's in within the banking industry, someone that was influential in kind of guiding you or getting you to the leader that you are today.
I look back and I think about people that helped me along my way. There was never any one person that was like, hey, this is, you know, tutoring me, mentoring me. I felt like I had several of those along the way, a couple of bosses. I had an attorney friend in Chicago who, for the life of me, I still never figure out why he decided to like help me out. But, I was jumping between banks and I was having to go to him and say, hey, what do you think about this? And should I do this? And this is a career ending move or whatever. And I got the opportunity a couple of, I guess, months ago to go back to him and say, like, hey, thank you. You didn't have to help me. I was just some random kid that from, Southern Indiana, and you decided to help me. I don't know why, but you did. So that's great. There's people here, leave them unnamed just because I don't know if they want to be named, but, people who have been very successful here in Louisville. When I moved back, I wanted to find that peer group, someone who could help mentor me if I got into times where I said, man, I really need a sounding board. And there are a few here that, that are immensely successful people, but you talk to them, they're still normal people. And they have very sound advice, but also they don't suffer fools. If, things are not going right, they're going to tell you and they're going to do it quick. So um, I guess roundabout way of answering your question, I don't know that I ever had someone that, showed me like, this is what leadership looks like. You see it in your day to day. I think you take pieces of each person from along the way and you kind of develop your own style.
Good. I like that. So kind of talking through, again, could be past, present, just talking through your journey. Talk a little bit about maybe a significant challenge you have, but then on the other side of that, a significant success or win that you may have had.
Yeah. I don't know if it was leadership based, but I was in Chicago. I was working for a bank and I was doing this for, at that point, probably a year or two. And the owners of the bank, it was a British bank, got to work one morning and guys from London were sitting in the back office. And at 9 o'clock, they just started bringing people back and firing people. And I'm like, oh, wow. I just bought my wife's engagement ring. And I went to my boss's office and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, this could be a really bad day, Greg. Not the answer I was hoping to hear. So I'm, immediately thinking about how do I live? I just put down all this money for the engagement ring. Am I going to have to go back and sell it back and have money to live? But so, luckily I had a boss's boss who had the foresight that saw this was coming. She moved a lot of us to a certain division and it saved us. It saved our jobs for about 15 or 20 of us. And so we kind of had a defined role then at that bank where we knew we were not going to have a job after a year or two. And I saw the writing on the wall and they said, well, I'm going to fix this for myself. I'm going to create a system to make sure that I don't get fired. And so, in our business, it's all about portfolio management and making sure that the loans are doing well. And so I built a database system where we managed all of our portfolio loans. And I knew if we put all the information into this database, they couldn't probably fire the guy who manages the database because they needed the information out of it. So I kind of made myself indisposable until I could find another job. And so my wife would always be like, what are you doing? I'm like, making sure I'm not getting fired.
Well done.
I guess that's both a challenge and a success. But I always tell people, like, go find something that someone doesn't like to do at your company and do it well. And you're going to be indisposable because if you do it well and they don't know how to do it, they're going to be like, well, Joe over here, he does this, but I don't know why he does it. He does it great though.
He's an integral part of the organization. We can't do anything with him now. Yeah, I love it. So you're interesting. This next question is interesting because you are obviously you're in the C-suite now. You're the CFO of the company. But where do you can speak maybe to Trilogy? You mentioned you guys want to be the best healthcare provider in the Midwest. Where do you want to go in 5 years? Now that you're the CFO, or maybe if you want to answer it, where do you want Trilogy to go? However you want to answer it. But curious your thoughts there now that you're at the C-suite level.
Yeah. I'll take the company first. I think it's an awesome time to be in our business. You have an aging population and it's really hard to take care of people at home. I've seen that firsthand when my mom got sick, trying to have caregivers come in and the affordability function is just not there when you have an individual person coming in. You have to pay that person, you have to pay the person that is, renting or leasing them to you, right? The staffing company. And so it's really tough to make that work for a lot of people. For us, growing and there's not a whole lot of people out there that are building new nursing homes. And that's sad, in my opinion, because there's so many better products out there now that we can offer people to age gracefully and be in a place that they feel safe and loved and being attended to. So I'm excited for our company. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to build new product and care for people. And I think we're going to have, a 10-year run at least where demographics are going to be in our favor to do that. On a personal level, I was, when I found out that I was going to be promoted, I said to my wife, man, what's this going to mean in 5 years? And she's like, why don't you just focus on the next 12 months? So she keeps me grounded. And I think that's right. I've never been a person who sat down and said, I want to be the CFO or the CEO or a president of a company. I've always taken the approach of, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing until I feel like I'm not learning anymore. I'm just going through the motions and doing the same thing every day. I'm not learning, I'm not growing. And so maybe it's time to look somewhere else. And so luckily here, I've always felt like I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm doing something new and different. So I'll keep doing that until, something else shows up or, a newer role here shows up.
As we kind of put a bow on everything and wrap up, I always like to leave everybody with a little nugget, whether it's a good leadership quote or a book recommendation or whatever it might be. But can you, you've talked a little bit about Trilogy, but as we wind down, can you tell us how people can connect with you, LinkedIn, whatever it might be, to kind of follow you and what your career is doing, and also maybe a book quote, whatever it might be, and then anything else you want to say about Trilogy or anything like that?
Yeah. The easiest way is LinkedIn. I try not to be on a whole bunch of social media platforms, but LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Personal wise, it's weird. Since I was a kid, probably since I was in the teenage years, I saw this quote by Henry David Thoreau that says, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and moves towards a life which they've imagined, they will meet with the success unexpected in common hours. And I'm probably butchering that. So if anyone actually, fact checks me on that, I think I have the general message down, but it's kind of been my mantra of like, I'm going to move towards where I want to be, even if it's baby steps, just move the ball forward towards that goal. Other books that I find that there's a lot of management books out there. A lot of them have similar ideas. I think Mel Robbins' new one, Let Them, is very interesting. It's good for the personal side of your life. I don't know if it's very great on business. A newer one that I've read is Super Communicators. It's one of those things where people think they've communicated ideas and information and where we're going. And I feel like, I forget what the quote is, but the biggest misconception about communication is it's taking place, right? Being able to communicate with people and tell stories and excite people about where you're going is probably the hardest part, I think, of leadership, and getting people to sign on and know that. Understanding how communication's working and being able to convey your message is really paramount, in my opinion.
Yeah. Funny you say that about Let Them by Mel Robbins. I just downloaded that on Audible yesterday. So timing is impeccable there. But thanks again, Greg. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your friendship. I enjoy talking to you in Vistage and enjoyed getting to know you, and excited to kind of continue watch you kick butt and take names, man. But again, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Been a blast.
Yeah. Appreciate it, everybody. Tune in next time for the next episode of the Building Success Podcast with Matt Ellis. Thank you.